Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Pretend Pros. We are your hosts. I am Beth Painter, the less rookie than Jenny. I think that's my title I'm going with from now on.
And I'm your other host, Jenny Hoffman. I am definitely the rookie. You will see as evidenced by my terrible March Madness recap picks in this episode.
Yeah, so we thought we'd do a couple recaps of some of the other episodes we've done. So, Jenny, you want to tell everybody what we got coming up?
Sure. In today's episode, we are recapping March Madness, both the men's and women's tournaments. You'll see how awesome Beth is with all her knowledge around her picks. And you'll see how terrible I am, coming in pretty much last place. We'll have that for you, along with some other stories of the tournament. And then we also have a recap on the Masters tournament, and you'll get to find out whether Beth actually watched golf. Hopefully she did. She's running a sports podcast, so let's hope she did her assignment.
But this is a good episode, I think, of maybe I did a little bit less rookie-ish with the basketball, definitely more rookie-ish with the golf, and you flipped the other way around. So that's a good balance, I think.
Without further ado, let's just jump right into it and enjoy this week's episode. So now that March Madness has come to an end, we were going to recap our standings in our bracket. So Beth and I were a part of a bracket. We've been a part of this bracket now for a couple of years. I started it through work and it just kind of took off from there. We have about 20 so people. We just added the women's bracket, I think, last year for the first time, since it started to having such a big following after Caitlin Clark's season. So we added that one in too. But we were going to recap. So a couple episodes prior, we had listed out our final four. Beth, do you remember who your final four were?
Yeah, so on the men's side, I got two of the final four right, almost three. I was one really bad turnover away because I had Duke and obviously that UConn upset. So I got Michigan and Illinois. I got Duke wrong. I think I had, I'm trying to think who the other one I had was. Who were the final? UConn.
Arizona?
No, I did not have Arizona. I don't remember. I knew I had two of the four right. And then on the women's side, I got three of the four. I had picked an upset, Texas not making it all the way to the end, and then they did. So I had, I think, Michigan instead of Texas. So I had three of the four.
Okay. And it looks like I had Michigan State, Florida, Arizona, and Iowa State. And
So
I just
zero, right? 0 out of 4.
Arizona.
Yeah, I think I had Purdue instead of Arizona. I think that's where I went wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just checking before we started recording this, and it looks like I came in 22nd out of, what did I say here? 22nd.
24, I think. 24, I believe it was.
24. So there you go. That is why I refer to myself as the rookie.
So I did manage to get fourth on the men's side because I did pick Michigan as the winner. So that certainly helped. I had lost points against whoever won in the bracket kind of in earlier rounds. So I had done pretty well at the end.
Who do you think was one of the best games out of that tournament, if you can think back?
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, I think one of the closest ones was definitely that Duke UConn game, which was just insane. I mean, I was kind of half watching it because it got to be so blown out that I lost a little bit of interest because I didn't really care that much who won. I didn't have any personal stake in either one. And then slowly but surely they chipped away. And I was actually out of town with some friends, none of whom were basketball fans, none of whom cared. And then when the turnover happened and then the crazy shot, I made everyone who I was with watch it even though none of them cared. So I started screaming and then I was like, okay, we have to watch. And then they were only showing the actual shot and I was like, that's actually not even, to me, that wasn't the most interesting part. It was the turnover that was so crazy that all they had to do was hang on to the ball. So I kept yelling at the TV, like, show the whole thing, show the whole thing. So they finally did. I made everyone in the room watch it. And you could tell none of them cared. And then they were like, are we done yet? And I was like, I guess. Yes, I guess we're done.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I was kind of in the same boat. I was in and out. But at one point, I think the lead was like 15, maybe more than 15.
I think it was 17. I mean, it was a big, big lead.
So I kind of checked out, and then all of a sudden I turned around and I was like, this may be an interesting game.
Yeah.
Doug and I were watching it, and we just lost our shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
We could not believe it. We jumped up We scared the dogs half to death, and we were like, "Oh my gosh." And I think that was everyone's reaction, probably
For sure. I
anyone who
mean, just
follows basketball for sure.
and if ESPN app has like the predictability of the winner. I mean, I think if you had been following that, it was absolutely crazy because it had to have had Duke winning at a very, very high percentage. So you scared the dogs. I scared all the people I was traveling with. And I don't know if you remember from the golf episode that we taped where I talked about how I lost out on a chance at Masters tickets. It was the same two teams and it was the same loser and winner. So I was having a little bit of like, flashbacks to this, again, like one bat, in my opinion, that game all those years ago, 26 years ago, I think it was. Like if Duke had just called a timeout, kind of organized themselves, and in this case, like one just really bad turnover in possession, you know, I mean, one could argue they should have never let them get back into the game after being up 17, but to have it come down to sort of a freshman and I mean, just the chaos of all of that was nuts. So, but I did enjoy the final game too, because I was being a Big Ten fan, I was definitely rooting for Michigan.
Yeah.
And I think we talked about too, Dusty May, their coach, is an IU grad. So also claiming a little bit of the win for the Hoosiers by default. So yeah.
And the guy who shot the game-winning shot, Mullins, I think was his
Hmm.
last name, right? So, interesting story. I don't know if I actually told you. My work colleague, he mentioned that Mullins is from his hometown, and he actually went to school with his parents. So,
That's
fun fact.
crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought that
He's
was
from
very interesting.
like an hour-ish away from Indy where the Final Four ended up. And IU recruited him hard because he was obviously on Mr. Indiana basketball. That used to be something that IU got those kids pretty regularly. And so we were in his Final Four when he was deciding where to go and obviously went to UConn instead of IU. So I was aware of his name, like kind of even unrelated to UConn, mostly from the recruiting, seeing lots of like, oh, maybe we're going to get him. We're in the Final Four of where he wants to go. So um, as with most things, I think of the if IU had done any of these things, we might have actually been in the tournament this year. So instead of sitting at home and watching it, rough. Yeah.
Favorite meme was actually from that game. I think I watched it. Actually, it was more like a video. I think I watched it at least 10 times. Was Dan Hurley's mom and dad in the audience. I could have
Yeah.
watched that 1,000 times over again. I think if it's ever put in front of me, I will stop what I'm doing and watch it because the sheer craziness and unexpected joy that kind of washed over to, well, first they didn't know what the hell was going on.
Yeah. Yeah. For
They were
sure.
just like, "What just happened?" They were completely clueless, and if you haven't seen Dan Hurley's mom and her video reaction to that game-winning shot, I highly recommend that you look it up. It is hilarious.
Yeah, and I think on the broadcast when they were showing it, which is where most people saw it the first time, they also had the Boozer twins, their dad who went to Duke, was a star, played in the NBA, like kind of the side by side of his reaction, which I think is just it's the craziness of every game in March Madness, but certainly the championship game of the highs of highs and just the lows of lows. And as a parent of somebody involved, like the starkness of those two reactions was pretty amazing. The Boozer twins are both going to do well. They're going to play in the NBA, I'm sure. So it's a little hard to feel too bad for them, but that's rough. That's a rough couple seconds of what happens.
And for the winning team, Michigan, not a fan of Michigan, being that I love Ohio State, so that one's a tough one. But I guess they finally broke the curse from the Fab Five. Was that the last
Yeah.
time they were in this tournament, like at
Yeah.
the
I'm
final game,
pretty sure.
the Final Four?
Yep. I'm pretty sure. So.
So,
And
you
those
know,
guys were all there. They were doing like an alternative broadcast because there's been a lot of drama and chaos, sort of sanctions and things that happened connected to the five of them. So they've all sort of made friends again. I think it's just been time, right? Time heals a lot of wounds. So it's kind of cool to see them. And they were very supportive of this team, which was nice to see as well. That they didn't think it was taking any of their thunder from sort of their days of playing. You see video of those games because I think I was in school when it's around the same time I was in
uh,
college.
92, 93.
Yeah, so that was when I was a freshman at IU, and you see some of what they were wearing back then. I mean, it's just hilarious to see the very baggy shorts and the styles just changed so much over the years, but
And I highly recommend for those of you out there that have not seen the 30 for 30 on the Fab Five, highly recommend you watch that. Great
yeah, those
30
were
for
some
30.
crazy times for sure.
Okay, moving on to the women's.
I was not surprised at UCLA. I mean, I think honestly, any of the other three number ones, you could say you weren't surprised, but it just really felt like this was their year, that they had come so far from last year. And those six seniors, which at some point we'll talk about the WNBA draft and just how amazing those six seniors were. Those six seniors scored all of the team's points in both Final Four games, which is just insane. And so I was not super surprised and was really happy for them. Lauren Betts is very easy to root for, in my opinion. So I was definitely all in on them.
So you also won in your picks for this bracket.
Yes.
You picked UCLA. I had UCLA losing out in the Final Four game to
Trying to think who
LSU.
that would have been. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because I had UConn, South Carolina, Texas, and LSU for the
Yeah.
Final Four.
So you got more of the Final Four right for the women than you did on the men's side.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this before. I feel like it's easier on the women's side right
Yeah.
now because usually those top seeds
Yes.
are pretty solid.
Yeah.
So for an underdog to come along, and I think the underdog this year was probably Virginia Tech,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. No, just
Or
UVA, because that's
just
who we talked
Virginia.
about with Kimora Johnson. That was her team. It was the Cavaliers. And so there's very few as big upsets, but the last 2 years in particular, all the number ones have made it, which I don't know that that was as common. I think there was often like a two that would sneak in there. But I think the difference between those four teams and kind of everybody else, there's just a huge gap and drop off, right? But the more, I mean, they're making more money in the WNBA now. That's just going to keep helping, right? More people are going to want to go to more schools. And, some of the big draft picks were not from those. I mean, there were a lot from those Final Four schools, but there were definitely players who came from other schools, and that'll just keep getting better, the odds of more upsets, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Probably the biggest headline that came out of
Yeah.
the tournament, unfortunately, was not a great one, but it
Yes.
was the matchup between South Carolina and UConn, and unfortunately, the aftermath of Gino and Don Staley. Gino did end up apologizing, but man, like the first thought I had was, why are you taking away from the South Carolina women's win? I felt bad for them because it was supposed to be a joyous time, lose with some grace.
Yes. And I give Don Staley a lot of credit for trying to keep turning it back to that and saying, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about what an amazing defensive performance her team put on. And it was the exact opposite situation last year. They got beat badly by UConn, who obviously went on to win the championship. And so this was just a reversal of fortunes. And so I give her a lot of credit. And then she and Corey Close, the UCLA coach, I thought they did a really good job of trying to not only stay away from the narrative, but sort of hype each other up. Dawn was very classy in her loss to UCLA, which I think helps just show there is a way to be frustrated you lost, but also be gracious and happy for somebody who you think is a good contributor to women's basketball. So definitely unfortunate.
But yeah, he did end up apologizing, so I guess that's
Yeah, and I don't know if you've seen, they both put out statements that they've actually spoken. I think they waited until the tournament was over and sort of all of the craziness had died down. And they've actually both put out statements that they've spoken to each other. They both want to move on. They both want to focus on growing women's sports and sort of they're done with it. So hopefully everybody else will be done too.
And as far as UCLA, they had 5 starting seniors, right? It was all seniors
Yes.
on that starting lineup.
Yeah, and the first person coming off the bench was a senior as well. So the good thing is they had 6 seniors drafted in the WNBA. The bad thing is they just lost 6 seniors. And again, those 6 seniors scored all of their points in the final 2 games that they played. They were the only point scorers. So you think about it from that perspective, it's less surprising that they won. Now, you got to reload a huge I mean, that's just a massive loss for a teams. It'll be interesting to see what they do next year.
And talking about losses for teams, that seemed to be a common storyline on the women's side. After the tournament, my Iowa State Cyclones have lost about
So you're claiming the women too, in addition to the men? Oh,
I'm
because you
sorry.
saw the women play. You saw the women play, so I guess you can
Yeah,
claim them.
yes, I
Okay.
saw I
All
saw both
right.
teams play.
Okay.
Yeah, so about all of them, all the starters, I think they had
Yeah.
9 that went into the portal, including Audi Crooks, the one we highlighted
Yeah.
a couple episodes ago. So that's not great news. I'd say there's some turmoil going on over there, but even more so, did you see the story about Tennessee?
Yeah. And some of that I think by now has started to work itself out a little bit. Virginia actually had the same situation. They fired their coach, and I think all the players went into the portal. So I haven't been paying a lot of attention to sort of where all that's landing. I mean, some of these teams are actually, I think Tennessee now has some players on the roster, but um, but I think it'll be interesting to see, particularly Kamora Johnson. I love that story that she was a local kid who played it. She was a ball girl at Virginia when she was a young kid. So it's just so sad to see that play out. But I did see she was a strong candidate to end up at South Carolina, which, if that's the case, like good for her because that will definitely help her grow. So there were quite a few teams, that had players, lots of players in the portal and or graduating. So there'll be some good turnover in teams next year. As a post-recording update, Kamora Johnson actually decided to remove herself from the transfer portal and she'll be returning to UVA. So we are looking forward to cheering her on next season as a Cavalier.
Yeah. I will say I have mixed feelings about the NIL stuff in the transfer portal. Yes, I think it's great they're getting paid. Like I don't fault that at all. But man, I wish that people stayed with teams a little bit
Yeah.
longer to actually build that that game and that bench and everything. When you're jumping from year to year, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. It kind of takes away the love for college sports that I had and
Yeah.
how this all went down back in the
Yeah,
day.
I have mixed feelings too, because I think some of the benefit from the player perspective is, if you came out of high school and you weren't highly recruited, but you worked really hard, maybe your first 2 years at a smaller school or a Division two, or whatever the case may be, and now you kind of maxed out your opportunity at that school with that coach. It does give them a good opportunity to go somewhere where maybe the coaching is better or different, or you can learn new skills. And so you think, oh, this does give them some opportunity. But I think the problem is when it got tied in with the NIL, now you do have a lot of just jumping for money, and the money situation has gotten a little out of control. I think if they could just put some guardrails in, the transfer portal as a concept is okay, the NIL as a concept is okay. You just got a little too much chaos that got added when the NCAA just did nothing to address the situation and kind of let it careen out of control. And now they can't put the genie back in the box, right? They're going to
Yeah.
need, I suspect they're going to need Congress or, some sort of legislative action because they're just going to keep getting sued if they try and rein it in on their own. And I mean, who wants the government involved in college athletics? That actually sounds way worse.
No
So
one.
yeah, yeah. So I think the NCAA should be very embarrassed of what they let this get to because it does feel like there was some opportunity for this not to be so chaotic and they just did nothing to help. And now, it's a mess. So, by the way, I did notice that we talked about where you ended up in the rankings. We didn't talk about where I ended up in the rankings.
For
So
women,
no, either one. So even though I picked the final fours, like I ended up fourth on the men's side and second on the women's side in our bracket.
for the women's side, I ended up second to last. So there you go.
As much as I want to claim that this is evidence of like what you keep saying is like your rookie status and whatever we're calling me, the less rookie, I think the simple reality is I have just finally benefited after potentially decades of always picking the Big Ten, that's actually a good thing all of a sudden out of nowhere because it didn't used to be. It used to screw me every single bracket because I am a little bit of a loyalist and I would pick Big Ten schools and that never worked out. And now all of a sudden the Big Ten is good. So they actually are, the Big Ten is the only conference that has had, at least to date, in the same season, the college football playoff winner and the men's basketball winner, and they're also the only conference that in total has had college football playoff winner, men's basketball and women's basketball. So it's pretty cool. And
How
when I said
long
that to
ago did the
somebody
women win?
this year, so that's
Okay.
exactly what happened because everyone forgets UCLA is in the Big Ten now. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I
Yep,
said that to
you're right.
somebody and they're
That
like, you're
just does
counting
not seem right.
UCLA?
When
I
they
know.
changed those conferences, I was
Yeah.
like, Well, first off, I hate it for the players, like, even
Yes.
Oregon, who is in the Big Ten for football, it's
Yep.
like the travel schedule, they're having to come t out to the East every time you turn around,
Yeah.
so I do feel bad in that sense, but, I still can't wrap my brain around them being in the Big Ten.
Yeah, somebody was like, "Are you really claiming UCLA?" And I was like, "I'm not in charge of conference realignment. Someone else put them in the Big Ten. So yes, we're going to claim them." But there's 4 schools out west. To your point, Oregon, Washington, USC in California, and UCLA. On the basketball side, when either coast kind of travels, they schedule 2 games in a row. So then they stay whichever direction. Obviously, football, that's not always feasible because they're not playing as often. So usually if basketball plays twice a week, a lot of times I'll see that whoever's come from the West Coast, they might play Indiana and Purdue in the same week just because it kind of helps keep them. They're not going back and forth. But at least some of those teams get to fly private. But you think about like the tennis team, the cross country team, whatever, the smaller teams, volleyball, they're flying on commercial flights and connecting and all the chaos involved in that. Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah, so, for my brackets, I picked some on feelings. Obviously, Iowa State getting to the Final Four. I think I do that every year, and every
Yeah.
year they disappoint me. But so I think I had Michigan State. Tom Izzo brings it usually around
Yeah.
the January, February, March timeframe. So, he has a chance, but that's another family favorite. So I had them in the Final Four too. So definitely
They
some.
were the Big Ten's last champion on the men's side. So now we've
Okay.
added, I guess they're all in the state of Michigan. So since it was Michigan State and Michigan, but
Yeah, I wouldn't have picked them for basketball, either side probably. I still think the Big 12, at least on the men's side, is still one of the stronger basketball
I don't know.
conferences.
Big
Well,
Ten's
obviously
kind of
they proved
showing
me
you
wrong
up.
this year because I
Yeah.
don't know if they had one team, Arizona,
Yeah.
they were in. But yeah, looking at them, I still think their strength of schedule is harder than some
I
of
don't
the
know.
other.
The Big Ten is definitely a bit of a gauntlet to make your way through. There's some good schools, and there were a lot of them. I think they had the most schools in the tournament this
Really?
year.
I thought the Big 12 did.
I don't know. I thought it was the Big Ten. I could be wrong. I thought,
Fact
well, I
check
mean, it's
us out
also,
there.
yeah, it's also a huge conference now, right? There's 18 teams. So if half of them make it, that's 9 schools, and that's still only half. So go Big Ten. I am blowing the whistle on our facts because what would an episode be if we didn't have to do that to ourselves? Again, that's why we call ourselves the pretend pros. We were both wrong, and the SEC had the most teams in the tournament on the men's side with 10, but the Big Ten did have more teams with 9 in the tournament than the Big 12 did, which had 8 along with the ACC. So I think we owe 1 for Beth, 0 for Jenny. Now I just need the Hoosiers to step up. At least we got football, man. Thank God. That's all we got right now.
I don't have anything else to add to this.
All righty. I think we're good on March Madness. Sad that it's done, but ready for new sports, I guess. So there we go.
All right, we're talking Masters recap. So, Beth, did you watch the Masters?
So I texted you on Wednesday and said, "Hey, I'm watching a little bit of the par 3. Does that count as my homework assignment?" And you said no.
No.
So I did watch a little on Sunday. I think this might be my strategy going forward because I was all in on the par 3. That was super fun. And that's my kind of golf where like the caddies are young children and oddly, who's the comedian that was there?
Celebrities?
Yeah, but it was, why can't I think of his name? The short guy who, anyway, it doesn't matter. So that was my kind of content. So I think this also follows how I watch sports that I don't really care much about, is I'm not really in on it until we're like down to the last little bit and there's like, stakes in there. Watching 4 days of the Masters, I have no interest in, but I did watch a little bit of it. I did pick somebody to root for. They did not win. That's how we landed. So.
Who did you pick?
Justin Rose. His
Okay.
always a bridesmaid vibe appealed to my underdog heart. Now, to be fair, the guy still, I think, made for $1 million for his, loss.
Third place.
Oh,
Was he third
yeah.
place?
I think he was one of the like 500 people that was tied for second. I
Okay.
thought he was under 10 maybe at the end. So I'm not feeling that bad for him. He's made lots of money, but listening to people talk about it, he's a nice guy, how many times he's come so close. I'd read a graphic of like, he's had, I think it was 7 top 10s, 4 top 4s, 3 runners up, definitely the always a bridesmaid. So I was rooting for him. I wasn't bothered Rory won, but I was rooting for Justin Rose.
Now, did you watch till the end on Sunday and see
I did
Roy get his
not.
green jacket and that
I
whole
did
tradition?
not. Yeah. So that was not because that was my plan, but I ended up having social plans. And there were several people who I think would have been okay with the TV getting turned on. That wasn't the vibe of the party. So that's not what happened. But there were several people who were kind of watching the scoreboard, waiting to see if Rory could kind of hang on to the lead or not. So,
Yeah. I was quite surprised he held on. I think he was on the top of the leaderboard every day except for one of the days he was tied, which I don't know if that's ever happened. And if it has, I don't remember the last time. But I was definitely surprised that he maintained a lead as many days as he did.
yeah, it certainly seemed like there was kind of a meltdown because I think I heard some people, like some content going into Saturday where he had a massive lead, and there was a lot of like, well, kind of in the bag, we'll just give him the jacket. And then I think by the time Sunday morning rolled around, that was definitely much more in question. So, because I think
Yeah,
my
he
my
had
guy
a
Justin
six
Rose,
stroke lead, I think,
yeah,
going into after Friday, maybe after
okay,
Friday.
yeah,
And
that sounds
then
right.
that all went away on Saturday, I think.
Yeah.
And it was relatively close all through Sunday until those last couple holes. So,
And
you
there
know,
were definitely different leaders on Sunday because Justin Rose was leading at one point. I think Cameron Young, right? Then it kept moving around. And then I think by the time I stopped being able to watch it, that's when Rory kind of kicked it into gear and ended up.
yeah.
But I think if
Well,
we go back to the par 3, I think I had texted you about Frankie Fleetwood, who I didn't know anything about. I guess he became an internet sensation last year with his attempt to get it over the water. And then I thought he came close this year. So I think he's got it next year. But I think my favorite part of all of that, because they let him hit a second time when he was kind of close, and his older sister, but who's not much older than him, right? I think he's like 8. And so she looked like maybe she was 11, 12, right? Still a kid. When he didn't get it the second time, she put her arm around him in what looked like genuine comfort. And all I could think was like, that's not how that would have rolled at my, there would not have been genuine comfort at the misfortune of one of my brothers or I. So I thought that was actually super sweet of her.
so what? There would have been laughter and
But yeah, and lots of making fun of, and yes, for sure. Definitely not what looked like very sincere, you'll get it next time kind of vibe. So,
when I watched the interview with him on one of the channels for maybe it was ESPN, and it cracked me up because yes, he's 8, but he was like an old soul. The
yeah.
way he was talking and just kind of like, I tried and I'm gonna keep trying, and it just wasn't my day. And in that British, I think he's
Yeah, it sounded like it. Yeah.
British accent. And it was super cute. But I thought it was really cool how the crowd cheered for him to have a second shot.
Yeah. I will say, I mean, not being a golfer, like he's set up pretty well. I mean, I thought he hit it. Like his stroke looked good. And then between him and Jason Kelsey's daughter, Wyatt, I don't know if you saw the videos
Yeah,
of
I did.
her at the driving range. I was like, okay, the 5-year-old and the 8-year-old are hitting it very solidly off the tee. Whereas every time I try to golf, I look down and the ball is still there. So I think I'm done attempting to golf. If 5 and 8-year-olds are killing it, I think I'm done. I'm out.
They're just proving that you can do it too.
Yeah, I don't think that's how I interpreted that. I interpreted that as like the game has passed you by. Leave it to literally the children, apparently, at this point.
Our guy, Gary Woodland, who we also featured a couple episodes ago, did make the cut. So that was awesome news. He ended up tied for third and he ended up breaking even. So not bad.
Seems like it's a hard golf course. That seems like that should be considered a win. But
The fact that he made the cut, I think, is awesome in itself because there were a couple big names that did not make the cut,
yeah.
including Bubba Watson and Bryson DeChambeau. And he's a big name. I think he was in the playoff last year with Rory, if memory serves me correctly. You know that just proves that even though you may be the biggest name
Yeah.
out there, it can be anyone's day and anyone's tournament.
The comedian I was trying to think of was Kevin Hart, and he was Bryson's caddy at the par three. So I saw somebody had suggested that maybe don't go that route next year of having a comedian be your caddy. I mean, not at the real thing, obviously, but at the par three, because it seemed like most other people had their spouses or their kids or family basically. And because I did not know the vibe of the par three, so when I turned it on, I was like, why is Kevin Hart in a caddy uniform and hitting the ball? Did I find the wrong channel? And then as I listened to it a little bit, I was like, oh, I still don't understand why Kevin Hart's there, but I understand this is no longer the actual Masters. This is like a, family friendly kind of activity. So maybe Kevin Hart was bad luck for him.
Okay, there you go. Don't have Kevin Hart as your caddy.
Lesson
He has to
learned.
provide some good laughs, though. I'm
I
sure they
would
had a great
imagine.
outing that
Yeah.
day. So my favorite story, besides the children playing coming out of it, was I don't know if you saw this headline, but one of the golfers, I forget who it was, ended up hitting a tee shot and it landed in a woman's bag right off
No,
the
you texted me that and I
side.
never did see the clip. I was surprised.
Yeah, it landed like right on top of her bag that was sitting kind of off to the side. They had to like move all the spectators. And the funny thing, I don't know if you've ever seen Happy Gilmore, but they make one of the people shoot it off a guy's foot. And
That was
so,
my question to my dad because I told him I was like, oh, Jenny texted me that it landed in somebody's bag, but I didn't see it. I was like, they don't make him hit out of the bag, and he was like, no, they do not. I'm like, all right, I'd be a bit again. That might be a bit funnier and like more my kind of vibes, but
but
yeah,
I think
apparently not.
people were cheering, hit it where it's at, hit it where it's at, play it where it lies. I guess that's a better terminology. But I thought that was actually kind of funny. But no, they took a tee or something and kind of like marked it right beside the bag.
Oh,
And I think
okay.
he had to like drop it there or something. But
That's
yeah.
funny. So the story I thought you were going to appreciate, I'm going to butcher his name, so apologies. It's, I think, Hao Tung. Again, I think I'm butchering his name, Lee. So he hit a 10 on a par five. I saw a graphic that showed like, the like where the ball went, which almost looked fake, but I guess if you got a 10, there was definitely some doubling back. It made me think of your story that you guys just call it a snowman and
So
just
man,
call it
yeah, I
like
would
he
have
could have
stopped.
used he could have used your rule. But to his credit, because on a day where there were some maybe bad behavior at shots that didn't go well, there was some broken clubs, there was some rudeness to reporters. He apparently went all in on the joke and posted like someone had gotten a shot of him. I mean, it wasn't the rough. He was like in the like full on in the woods. Like you almost couldn't see him, but like somehow on a hill. So like he's just sort of popped up and he posted, I don't even know what the other photo he posted, but it was like maybe it's a famous painting or something of a woman and like went in on the joke. He posted on Instagram sort of like, guess we'll have to give this another go round. So the quote I said was like, in a world of, whatever, you should be, again, I'm going to butcher his name, but Hao Tung Lee instead of maybe some of the other guys who did not lose as gracefully. But yeah, I
I
did think
think
that was
it looks like he tied for 38 now that I'm looking at it. He had a +1 final score. But
why.
that final round, he was +8.
Yeah. Well, apparently that shot I read, or that hole cost him like $600,000 because it was so bad. It dropped him so far in the money. So that seemed probably less funny than his Instagram post if you were him.
I
But I give
wonder
the
what
guy
that's called
credit.
because I know like double bogey, but like what is a 5 over par?
So shooting a 10 on a par three is apparently called a quintuple bogey. So learned something this episode. Although I definitely prefer Jenny's idea of stopping counting at eight and just calling it a snowman. Yeah, like even I know not good to double the points of what the like expected. So, I mean, like give the guy some credit for finding the humor in what had to have been super frustrating moment of golf, right? But again, to your point, I didn't know who he was before, but he made the Masters. So this isn't some nobody, right, who just learned how to play golf yesterday and still have a pretty bad day apparently, or a bad hole, I guess.
So are you going to watch more golf? Where does this lie in best sports world? Are you going to commit to watching more golf?
No, absolutely not. I mean, maybe I will watch the last day of some of the four big events, but even that feels like it is a stretch. So, yeah, we were talking a little bit before about the sports that we're watching right now, and obviously there's a lot of golf being played. I don't know what else I would have to be picking between before golf would work its way up, but no, I will not be watching more golf.
So
Yeah.
that's like the lowest sport on your radar?
I mean, not the lowest, because I mean, there's some like they show bowling on television. I think sometimes cornhole makes it onto ESPN, so like not the lowest, but this is sort of how I approach like all the sports that I don't really like, not into, like baseball, NBA, hockey. Like sometimes a playoff situation can kind of hook me in a little bit. So, the last day, the Sunday of a major where there's a little more interesting stories. Maybe I'll start paying attention to Justin Rose now and sort of root for him randomly. But no, I don't think I'm about to become a golf fan.
Okay, well, there you have it, folks. Beth is not sold on golf.
Headline.
Thanks for joining us on this week's episode. And if you've liked what you've heard and you've stuck with us this far, we would love for you to subscribe. We are on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. We hope to see you next week.